If you have a Switch 1, you're almost assuredly familiar with the dreaded Switch tax. The Switch tax!
The cheese tax!
The price that gets pushed onto Switch games for no reason other than it's on the Switch. Well, it looks like the Switch tax, my friends, may be eviscerated and eliminated for Switch 2. We got our first sign that the Switch tax is no more. So good morning, Mario, and good morning, Switch fans. Also, Sony speaks about the freaking Switch 2, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And we've got some more good details and goodies on Switch 2 games. So what's going on, everybody? It's Active SwitchForce. Hit that like button if you enjoy these videos and are excited for Switch 2, which is getting closer by the day. Pre-orders should be dropping hopefully soon, sometime this month, surely. And Mario Kart's Direct is this Thursday in just 2 days. But you know what's even sweeter than all of that upcoming stuff? Not having to pay extra just because the game's on Switch. Do you remember how many times we had to do this? I mean, Nintendo definitely has their own Switch tax. They're like, guess what? Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, $60 on Switch, even though it was less on Wii U. But then there was the even worse Switch tax where you'd get a game that was $29.99 on PS5 and Xbox, and they'd throw it on the eShop for $40. You'd get a cartridge that was $39.99 on other systems as a disc, and that cartridge would be $60. There was this weird thing where Switch games just got inflated because they were on Switch, and it looks like that might be no more. The great example is coming from the wonderful Split Fiction cooperative Standout. This game is being priced by EA, of all people, at $50, which is the same price as the other platforms. Now, obviously, this could change from publisher to publisher, game to game, system to system, but right now this is boding pretty well. And I think given that it's much easier to port games to Switch 2 than it was Switch 1, where you needed not only special skills but a special port studio, I have a feeling that the Switch tax might kind of be eliminated. Also, given how popular the Switch 1 is, and given how popular we expect Switch 2 to be, if you're trying to sell your game multi-platform, there's not really a big reason to bump the price and try to gouge these Switch 2 gamers. I will say the one issue is that whole cartridge debacle that we heard about earlier, where, hey, Nintendo is offering a tiny cart and a huge cart, and the huge cart is like $16, so it is costing these companies a lot of money to put their games physically. If you don't mind getting your game digitally, I have a feeling that you won't be paying much Switch tax, which is a very good thing. Now, there are a few games that are coming out at the Switch 2 launch that are late ports, right? There's games like Elden Ring, games like Final Fantasy VII Remake that are coming out late. My hope is that they buffer the price increase with DLC inclusion. So we know Elden Ring is the Tarnished Edition, right? So it should include all the DLC. So thereby, if they charge a full price for it, like, hey, it's okay because we're getting this sort of Game of the Year, this sort of deluxe edition, and it mitigates the fact that, hey, they do want to charge a full price, you're getting a full price worth of content. As opposed to Switch 1, where we just see games come out, and even like a game like Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, $30 on other platforms, $40 on Switch. Why? We don't know. And that was just an indie title. I think that you will see your games be priced pretty fairly on Switch 2. And one of the reasons is probably also because games in general are going up in price, so there's not as much need to gouge, which sucks that games are going up in price. Hopefully, the Switch, though, doesn't see an extra increase. And based on what we've seen in terms of games releasing already on the Switch 2, games that are from third parties, it's like, hey, it's Cyberpunk, but it's giving you the Phantom Liberty expansion, so that is justifying the full price. If you recall, with a game like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Nintendo was like $60, and I felt like I was kind of getting ripped off because I already got this game for cheaper. Or Nintendo was getting ports of games from like 10 years ago, and they were like, hey, it's still $60, even though it's $20 elsewhere. I hope that that is erased for Switch 2. And I think another great factor that the Switch 2 has going for it is it's going to get a lot more games day and date. So this issue will not be even as plausible, right? A lot of companies were faced with, hey, we're releasing on Switch 2, it's later than the other consoles, it's 6 months later, but we want to charge full price because like that's the value of our game, right? Wrong. It's already on sale just about everywhere. Ubisoft games are a great example. They go on sale super fast. So I guess that will be one to watch. Where do they price Star Wars Outlaws at? What do they price Assassin's Creed Shadows at? How do they handle these in comparison to their deals available on other platforms? Now, I will say that I would give a bit of a pause for the launch window titles. I think some companies might push heavy with full price at their launch window because of the fact that they want to charge more and get more because they know people are just desperate for games. There's not as much out there, there's not as much available. If we are seeing a bit of a Switch tax at the start, I would give it some time. I want to see what happens come holiday season. Is there a Switch tax to the games that are dropping in October, November, and December? I hope that there's not. That will be one of the biggest bummers and one of the biggest nails in the coffin to making the Switch 2 a viable solo platform. And by that I mean you could just have a Switch 2 because it's promised to get so many great games and so many multi-platform titles and has so many great partnerships. But if there is going to be an increase in price, well, then that's not the console you want. You don't want a console where it costs more to play the same games. And I hope that this split fiction price is an indication that, hey, they're just going to try to do the same price as everybody else. Is that too much to ask? The same price that you pay elsewhere, we want to pay on the Switch too. I think that's fair. I think the versions are going to be competent. I think they're going to be good. I think they might even be exciting. I don't think they're going to be better. And therefore, we should not be paying any more of a price. Please eliminate the Switch tax. Now, Shuhei Yoshida is a pretty cool guy. I think he's done some great work for Sony, but his take on the Switch 2 is kind of weird. He's not really a big fan of the Switch 2, which, I mean, I guess if you're trying to sell your PS5, and we've heard already early rumors that the PS6 is going to have a portable version, which will be mass chaos and craziness as everybody tries to copy Nintendo. They're back to being the kings of the castle, and everyone wants a piece of their pie. But Shuhei Yoshida says that Nintendo is losing their identity. To me, it was a bit of a mixed message from Nintendo. In a sense, I think Nintendo is losing their identity, in my opinion. For me, they are always about creating a new experience, designing hardware and games together to create something, an amazing new experience. But Switch 2, as we all anticipated, is a better Switch, right? It's a larger screen, more powerful processor, higher resolution, 4K 120 FPS. They even have the hardware person starting the stream like other platforms do, right? And because it's a better Switch, the whole core premise of the Switch 2 is, we made things better. And that's something other companies have been doing all the time. Shuhei. I get your concern that you're worried about the Switch 2 competing with your PS5, but don't crap on it just because it's doing what you've done every generation. Every single PlayStation is a better PlayStation, and Shuhei is insinuating here that Nintendo can't compete if they just do what the other console platforms do, but I think Shuhei is failing to read the room and see that Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda, those are some pretty popular games. I don't know what you're rolling with, Mr. Shuhei, over on Sony right now. It seems like you're in a bit of a struggle bus when it comes to getting your first-party exclusives out there. Besides, like, Spider-Man, what you really got going on right now. They will have more releases. It seems like they're kind of rebooting some of their studios to make new IP and new franchises, and that's always exciting, but this is exactly what PlayStation does. How are you going to crap on what you do yourself? And it's what Nintendo fans wanted. The Switch is a brilliant idea. They don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just make the wheel nice, ergonomic, speedy, and don't let the rubber burn off. I think Nintendo is doing the absolute right thing, and to see criticism that they're losing their identity, by identity, do you mean third place? Because that's not the identity I know of Nintendo. When I was little, Nintendo was top dog, and I think they're on their way to being there once again. They definitely were in the Switch era, Mr. Yoshida. They took the cake in terms of sales and in terms of dollars and cents. Will they do it again? I think they just might. And here's a big reason why. Let's look at what Devolver Digital is saying about Nintendo Switch 2. Devolver Digital, as you know, a great publisher. Their games pretty much always fantastic, and their games a huge supporter of Nintendo Switch 1. The recent Nintendo Direct showcase introduced the Switch 2 and highlighted 3 Devolver games. They say Star Seeker: The Astroneer Expeditions, Human Fall Flat 2, and the spiffy Enter the Gungeon 2, all dolled up in 3D graphics. The Nintendo Switch is currently Devolver's most popular console platform with over 9 million units sold. And this is something that the Switch does so much better than even the Steam Deck. Yes, Steam is very popular, but there are only a few million Steam Decks out there. Let's be very clear. There are exponentially way more Switches. We're talking like 10-fold more Switches than there are Steam Decks. 8, 9, 10-fold, something like that is what we're hearing about how many Nintendo Switch are out there versus Steam Deck. So if you're looking to put your indie game on a console, it's going to be Switch. Maybe you have a deal with Microsoft and Xbox Game Pass, that's nice, but the Switch is where you want to be for anything that is going up on a digital platform. The Switch has been super successful for so many of these titles, from individuals, games like Animal Well and freaking Katana Zero, 2 games from smaller upstart publishers and developers, 2 games that are AA, and then games that are from these indie powerhouses like Devolver Digital. The Switch is a supreme system because it not only has a great idea, it not only has great first-party games, the best first-party games, but it also gets the best of the indie space, and it gets the best because they know they're going to sell so much. While many companies were slow to adopt Switch in their arsenal, indie companies were really excited because of the opportunity. Hey, if there's not going to be these Ubisoft hits there, our games can do better. And it'll be interesting to see how this merges now that there will be more third-party titles and more major franchises and AAA IP available on Switch 2, but I still think the Switch has established itself as the best place to play all of these games. And yes, maybe this Steam Deck is a great alternative as well, and your Steam library does carry over, but there are small beans numbers of Steam Decks compared to Switch, and now the Switch 2 is very powerful. Now the Switch 2 is probably better than the Steam Deck. Now the Switch 2 is the choice no matter what. And I think that's really quite wonderful. Nintendo attacking on all fronts. They've got the best exclusives, they've got amazing indie support, and now they're bringing in third-party support to be built out even better than it was last generation, where Nintendo had made some significant gains over the Wii U generation. I think Nintendo is just in a beautiful spot. I think Nintendo is going to crush, and I think it's great to see a company like Devolver confirm, like, yo, Switch is our most popular console platform. PS5, Xbox, yeah, we'll release there as well. But we're going to give much of our priority and much of our prime spot to Nintendo Switch 2. And that's what we're seeing with like Hades 2 getting the exclusive first console release on Nintendo Switch 2. We're seeing something like Hollow Knight Silksong get its announcement for 2025 at the Switch 2 Direct. And you can bet your butt there's going to be so many games that come out on Switch 2 first. A lot of times with the indie worlds for the Switch 1 era, we were like, oh, we want to get that game that already came out. No, I think that's going to change. I think now it's going to be the other platforms, even the PC sometimes, saying like, hey, we want to get this game that you released on Switch 2. So let me know your take on today's topics. How are you feeling about the Switch tax possibly poofing away? I think it's going to. Early on, like I said, there might be a little adjustment period, but I think that Switch tax is going to be a thing of the past. And Mr. Shuhei Yoshida, cool guy, I don't think he really nailed it at all in terms of his take on the Switch 2. But let me know your take. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Love you lots. SwitchForce out.